Welcome to Jewish Online Magazine Weekly Torah Portion. This week's drasha comes from Rabbi Mordechai Kremenetsky, Torah.org, Parashat Kedoshim 5760. This week there is a double portion, Acharei Mot and Kedoshim. Among the many commandments explicitated in this week's Torah portion, we find the ubiquitous phrase of brotherly love. Love your neighbour as yourself has found its way in varying forms into the moral codes of an array of cultures and civilizations. What is interesting, however, are the phrases that precede this exhortation. You shall not take revenge, and you shall not bear a grudge against the members of your people. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. I am Hashem. Rashi quotes the Talmud in Yoma on the varying forms of grudges. If Reuven says to Shimon, "Lend me your sickle," and Shimon replies, "No." And the next day Shimon says to Reuven, "Lend me your hatchet," and Reuven retorts, "I am not going to lend it to you, just as you refuse to lend me your sickle." This is avenging. Bearing a grudge, however, is if Reuven says to another, "Lend me your hatchet," and he replies, "No." And on the next day he says to him, "Lend me your sickle," and Reuven replies, "Here it is, I am not like you because you would not lend me." This is bearing a grudge because he retains enmity in his heart, although he does not actually avenge himself. The strange juxtaposition seems a bit difficult to comprehend. Why would the Torah warn us against revenge, an act that is surely filled with malice and ill will, and then command us to instead love our brother as ourselves? Surely one who wants revenge is not ready to take that great leap from anger-filled rage to the highest level of brotherly love. Shouldn't the Torah rather end the exhortations with the plea of brotherly reconciliation? Isn't asking the potential avenger to love the object of his anger like himself asking too much? Rabbi Elchon Wasserman, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Baranovich Yeshiva, visited the United States in the latter part of the 1930s to raise funds for his yeshiva. Unfortunately, he made a greater impact on America than America made on the yeshiva, and the funds raised did not help much. Reb Elchanan returned to Poland, clouded by the darkness of war, to be with his students for the ensuing nightmare. The Nazis later murdered him together with his students in Kovno, in the Kovno ghetto. Whilst he was in the United States, he was accompanied by young, enthusiastic students, Rabbi Mordechai Kremenetsky's father amongst them, who felt privileged to help the great sage in his efforts. Once a student brought him to visit a wealthy man who had a great reputation of donating to charity and good causes. The Bocher was confident that the meeting would prove successful. Unfortunately, the expectations proved fruitless, and Reb Elchanan and the student were shown the door empty-handed. The young man left the house and sat down on the steps of the mansion, utterly dejected. Reb Elchanan, who was quite tall, bent down to him. "Why are you so upset?" he asked softly. "Upset? Why shouldn't I be upset? This man has the ability to support your whole yeshiva for a year, and he sent us away as if he does not have the ability to give even a dime." Reb Elchanan smiled. "The Torah tells us that Moshe was told to choose Bezalel to build the Mishkan. Now let us assume that Moshe went into the street and asked where he could find Bezalel. Moshe was told that Bezalel could be found in the Beis HaMidrash. He went to the Beis HaMidrash and asked someone, 'Are you Bezalel?' The man said, 'No.' Should Moshe have been upset? Of course not. It's not the man's fault that he was not Bezalel. He was not born Bezalel, and his job was obviously not to be Bezalel. Moshe went to another man. 'Are you Bezalel?' Again the man said, 'No.' Should Moshe have been angry with him? Again, of course not. 'Well, my son,' continued Reb Elchanan, 'you can't be upset with him. He is just not the man that was chosen to help.' Perhaps one can explain the verse by saying that one cannot be upset when the hammer is not offered. If your friend did not give you what you wanted, then this particular neighbour is obviously not the vehicle, messenger or shaliach to give it to you. You can't avenge that fact. Perhaps that is why the phrase, 'to love your neighbour as yourself,' follows the Torah's exhortations against revenge. At the time that you are disappointed, even angry at a friend or relative for not lending or giving you an item, take a step back and think, are you angry at yourself for not having a hammer? Of course not. Why should you be? You don't own a hammer. You can't be angry at yourself if you don't have the hammer. If you don't have a hammer, you can't give yourself the hammer. The Pasuk is telling us, you shall not bear a grudge. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. Just as you do not bear a grudge at yourself for not having a hammer, don't be angry at anyone else. After all, they obviously weren't the ones chosen to give it to you. So next time you are upset at someone for not aiding you in what you yourself could achieve, think, do not take revenge or harbour ill will. Treat your neighbour as you would have treated the original culprit for incapability, and love him as yourself. This week's Torah portion, Drasha, comes from Rabbi Mordechai Kamenetsky, Torah.org, Parashat Kedoshim 5760, and has been delivered by David Barry of Jewish Online Magazine, filmed by Katie Barry.